All right, folks, we are going to go ahead and get started. And the first thing I want to do is welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday morning for our Kitten Shower. We have done this event a few times before. This is the second time that we are doing this event in a virtual setting. So we are incredibly stoked that you were all able to join us. Take time out of your Sunday to spend time with us and hang out with our kittens, which is always exciting. So the first thing I want to go through are just a couple quick housekeeping notes for those of you that may have just joined the call. We are going to be having everybody on mute this morning, just to make sure that we're keeping down any chatter and things like that, so that as we go through today's presentation, we get a chance to talk to Hannah Shaw, aka the Kitten Lady, that everybody gets to have the chance to benefit from her knowledge and her experience, and learn a little bit more about these teeny tiny felines that we are incredibly excited to be helping out every single day here at Michigan Humane. So going forward, we are going to ask that you drop only technical questions into the chat. The reason for that is just to help keep everything streamlined so that the folks who are assisting with technical issues can see them quickly and be able to get you the information that you need right away. We are also going to be doing a Q&A with Hannah Shaw a little bit later on in today's program, and those questions have been submitted already. So if you do have a question for Hannah, you can drop us a note, but please know that we probably won't be able to get to it. It's only going to be if we have additional time left over. Then the next thing that we're going to do following our Q&A with Hannah will actually be, we have some fantastic raffle prizes to give away, and you'll also get an opportunity to meet the amazing kittens that you are seeing on our Purina Kitten Cam this morning, and they are super cute. So if you want to blow out the Kitten Cam and just listen to us chat away, you are more than welcome to do that. But we would definitely encourage you to keep your presentation running with speaker and gallery view, just so you can kind of see everything that's going on and have access to all the information at the same time. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about kittens. So our kitten project here at Michigan Humane benefits hundreds of orphaned and neonate kittens every single year. So we are seeing kittens that are coming in with moms. We're seeing kittens that are coming in without moms, and all of them need help and support, whether it's additional medical care, supplies, and most of them need to be out of our shelters in order to thrive and turn into the best cats that they can possibly be. So that is where all of you that are on the call with us today come in. You are helping us make that kitten project a reality, whether you're donating registry supplies, dropping off donations at the shelters in the form of blankets and towels and snuggle safes and formula and all of those things, or if you are one of those amazing folks who's able to step in and foster our teeny tiny felines, we appreciate it more than we could ever say. So before we get into all of the nitty gritty with Hannah about caring for these tiny felines, we did want to give you a little bit of a sneak peek at our special guest today. So Andy, if we are ready, we are going to go ahead and share a little video from Hannah.
My name is Hannah Shaw. I'm known as Kitten Lady. I was pretty astounded when I found my first kitten outside that there were not a lot of resources to save them, and there weren't a lot of educational tools out there to help me learn what I needed to do. When people picture a kitten, they picture this 8-week-old fluffy kitten. Those are our most adoptable cats in a shelter. But what people don't realize is kittens 0 to 8 weeks old are actually the most at risk of euthanasia in United States shelters. My entire life's work is trying to raise awareness about these issues, how at risk kittens are, and to empower people to see that anybody can help make a difference in their lives. A huge part of what I do is create instructional content on YouTube. It's time for another instructional video. I create videos about everything from how do you safely give a kitten a bath, to how do you deal with a specific health condition with a kitten, how do you bottle feed. Good job! The thing I wish everybody who cared about cats knew about orphan kittens is that they desperately need our help, but that it doesn't take much for a person to help them. I want people to see that this is not just something to watch somebody do on the internet. This is something you can do in your home. Fostering is less about being an expert and being perfectly prepared. It's a lot more about kind of having the heart and the spirit to want to help.
So Hannah hits the nail on the head, right? It is not about the expertise. It is about a willingness to help. And so again, just a huge thank you to everybody that's joining us today. All at this point, 141 of you, and then those folks that'll be tuning into this recording a little bit later, for having a willingness to help and a desire to step in and support a pretty vulnerable group of animals. So when we're talking about animals, there's really nobody better to kind of segue us into, the purpose of today's event than our very own President and CEO here at Michigan Humane, Matthew Pepper.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Hannah. And I would just echo on something you said. Both of you kind of hit on, which is you can make a difference, and everything we do is a partnership. Everything we do is taking your passion in our resources and our passion and putting it together towards something pretty amazing. So first of all, thank you all for joining us at our virtual Kitten Shower presented by Purina. We are incredibly grateful to everyone for that support that makes this work possible. And again, when you think about our work and what we are here to do, it's about being a voice. It's about being an advocate for the most vulnerable. And as you heard in Hannah's video, and it rings absolutely true here, when we think about this population, these kittens, these are some of the most vulnerable, the most in need that we see. It's hard work. For those of you who have fostered young kittens, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's hard work, but it's necessary work, and it's really who we are. Last year alone, through your help and your partnerships, we saved the lives of over 600 kittens through that compassionate care, through this kitten program. And that doesn't happen, again, without people like you. Over 150 homes opened up their hearts and their doors to kittens to foster them in a time of need. So in addition to Purina, I want to thank Revolution Plus, Premier Pet Supply, and Amelia and John Hughes for their support of this year's Kitten Shower. It is, after all, a celebration. It's hard work, but it's a celebration on what we can make possible together. And I want to say thank you also to everyone who participated in the kitten registry for gifts. We've already received over 200, and the staff is extremely excited to see them in action. So again, from all of us to you, thank you for helping us save lives and helping us do something really special in this community for a truly vulnerable population. So thank you all for everything you do. Anna, it's back to you.
Thanks, Matt. And I will echo what Matt said regarding supplies. Our staff and many of our fosters are already benefiting from the supplies that you all have been sending in through the registry. So if you have a minute, if you are interested in making a gift through that registry, you can find that link on the Michigan Humane Kitten Shower page at michiganhumane.org/kitten shower. So next up is the part that I am most excited about. I have a feeling it's the reason why a lot of you guys are joining us this morning. We have the opportunity to kind of pick the brain of somebody who has been incredibly important to me as a kitten foster parent. And I know she's been very important to a lot of folks out there who are super enthused about caring for kittens. And that is Miss Hannah Shaw, AKA the Kitten Lady. So Hannah, I'm gonna run through your bio real fast and then we'll get into the fun stuff. So Hannah is a kitten rescuer, humane educator, and New York Times bestselling author who has dedicated her life to finding innovative ways to protect animals. And her project, Kitten Lady, strives to create global change in the way that we perceive and treat the tiniest and most vulnerable felines. So the Kitten Lady provides educational media, training resources, and instructional workshops that help individuals and animal shelters learn how to save the lives of kittens in a fun and engaging format. If you haven't had a chance to watch her YouTube videos, highly recommend, even just as just a break in your workday, right? Like they're great things to watch and listen to. She has received several awards for her advocacy work, including the 2019 Cat Advocate of the Year awarded by the ASPCA. She is also the founder of the Orphan Kitten Club, which is a 501c3 charitable organization. And you can get more information about all of her efforts, her innovations, and her work for these tiniest of felines at kittenlady.org. So Hannah, are you ready to answer some questions for us?
Yeah, I'm surrounded by kittens. I'm going to apologize in advance. There's a very noisy, crinkle tunnel that they're all enjoying running through right now. So if you hear some crinkle sounds, it's the kittens. I'm gonna try to
so,
keep them all on screen.
no worries. I think everybody on here totally understands the fun of crinkle toys for kittens. So, so we're going to jump right into it. And we had a fantastic question actually submitted by Brenna, who is one of our foster parents here at Michigan Humane. Thanks, Brenna. Who says, my girls, Kylie and Delaney, are big fans and would like to ask which kitten has impacted your life the most? And when you knew that advocating for cats and kittens was what you wanted to do with your life?
I feel like I can answer both of those with one kitten, which is my cat, Coco. So my cat, Coco, she's 12 years old now, and she is the reason that I do everything I do. I always considered myself an animal lover and an animal advocate, but I had like no idea that kittens needed advocacy so much and needed caregiving so much. About 12 years ago, I was in a public park in Philadelphia and I looked into a tree and there was a kitten like up in the tree. And I was like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And it was that moment. I'm so sorry. Can you hear their crinkling? I can remove this toy. I looked into this tree and I was like, okay, it was that moment where you have to decide, like, am I somebody who says I love animals, or am I somebody who says I love animals and like takes an action on behalf of them to help them? And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do, but I'm just gonna try. So I tried to climb the tree and I somehow did. I'm not very athletic, but I climbed this tree, got to the top, got the kitten. I stuck her in my shirt, shimmied down the tree. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like what am I supposed to do now? So that kitten, I was like, I guess I can hold on to her for like a little bit. And then of course, within 2 hours, I was like, this is my cat. I'm a cat lady now. This is my life. Like, I love this so much. And then, from there, I think it became known that I had rescued a kitten out of a tree. And so whenever my friends would find kittens, they would call me and say, what do I do if I found a kitten? And I'd say, well, you can just bring them here and we'll figure it out together. I didn't keep another kitten for a really long time, but I would help them get healthy and then I'd find them a home. So fostering for me really started accidentally. And I think a lot of people start that way, but I always encourage people, like, if you are seeing people online fostering kittens, you don't have to wait until you find one in a tree. Like, they're waiting for you at Michigan Humane or at your local shelter. So yeah, I think that was definitely the moment that everything shifted for me, because I just didn't know. I started looking for resources to help her and I couldn't find any good information. I started looking for programs that could help her. And 12 years ago, I mean, the community I was in, there was no kitten program. So I was like, okay, this really is me or nothing. So what can I do other than, try to do my best and try to help? And that's why I say you don't have to be an expert. I definitely wasn't. And sometimes I still feel like, I'm learning something new all the time. That's the joy of fostering. You always are learning, always something new. I can't hear you.
You think after a year of virtual, we would have all gotten the hang of this by now, but
it's totally okay. I'm gonna move this while you ask a question. I'm gonna move this crinkle thing because they're all obsessed with it right now, and it's very loud.
All right. So Hannah, you touched on the fact that, when you rescued Coco, that there wasn't a ton of information out there, regarding kitten care and how best to support them. So obviously, one of the things you're most known for those of you out there that maybe don't know Hannah's work as well, are, your videos, your YouTube page, your Instagram page, where you're helping to not only educate folks about kittens, but showing them how amazing and how much fun it is to have kittens running around in your home for several weeks at a time. So how important do you think those types of media platforms have been to helping promote fostering of kittens and caring for kittens and kind of paying attention to kittens?
I hope that it's really helpful. I know for me, I am a really visual learner, and I also learn really well through kind of doing and seeing someone do. So I think I try to create resources that exist in a couple of different different kinds of platforms. So like I have a book on kitten care, but I have videos also, or you can attend an event, or I have an audio book, because people learn in different ways. But I know, in this kind of time where everybody's on social media, I think a way that people can really not just learn, because if I just said like, hey, everybody come learn how to take care of kittens, I would have fewer people watching. But you kind of like trap people with kittens. You invite them to come like watch a fun story about a kitten, and then they end up learning, and then by the end of it they're like, wait, maybe I could do that, right? So I try to teach through doing a lot, and try to kind of show people, like take people on the journey with me of what this kitten's journey is from rescue to adoption, and the lessons that can be learned along the way. So yeah, I think, the instructional videos, oh my gosh, I wish I had had that. I wish I had had that, because, that would have been really, really helpful to me. So I try to tell people, if you're interested in this, there's probably a video about the thing you have a question about. And if there's not, then there's probably like a Q&A session you can attend. There's also such an amazing online community now of people who can answer your questions, or people who do this kind of work. And it's such a generous community. All of us are in this together. All of us want everybody to succeed. So I think that social media has done wonders for cats and kittens, because I always say, like, dogs have the dog park, and so you can go to you can go outside and see how wonderful it is to have a dog as a companion. And you see puppies and dogs out there with their little adopt me bandanas on. But for cats, they rely on the internet, right? They rely on the internet for us to show people like what a joy it is to have a cat in our lives, and what a joy it is to foster kittens. And I hope that I've been able to bring some of that joy into people's living rooms and onto their phones, and then help them realize you can do this at home. Anybody can do this. Really, I believe that anybody can find a way to work with kittens and have them in their lives.
Absolutely. So when we talk about care for kittens, which is one of the things that you focus on a lot, right, is caring for kittens and how to help best support them so that they thrive and they grow. One of the things we talk about, as Barb Rivard, who's one of our foster parents, pointed out, is kitten poop.
Oh, yeah.
So we talk about poop a lot in the shelters. You talk about it a lot in your content. So what's the deal with poop? And I feel like one of the biggest things with that is constipation. So can you talk us through, the importance of making sure, for lack of a better term, that our kittens are regular? and
Sure.
What does that look like, when you've got kittens in your home? What does that type of care look like?
Yeah. Well, how much time do I have? Just kidding. I can talk about poop for like hours. So, okay, here's my little spiel about poop. Poop is like a report card that comes out of your kitten and says, here's how I'm doing. It's awesome because it's like a printout of like what's going on with them inside. And then your job is to get really curious about how your kitten is doing. So poop is one of the things that you're monitoring when you have kittens. You're monitoring a couple different things. You're looking at their weight, you're looking at their temperament, but you're definitely looking at their poop. And if you think it's gross in the beginning, later on, you're going to be like texting all your friends pictures of poop, like, woohoo, look at this good poop. I do that more than I'm proud to admit. But so what do you want from a kitten's poop? You want to have them pooping regularly, which looks different for every kitten. 24 hours goes by, your kitten didn't poop. Okay, I don't panic at 24 hours, but you're right that some kittens do deal with constipation. If they reach like 36 hours, 48 hours without pooping, that's definitely when I would recommend letting somebody know, talking to your foster coordinator or the vet, because kittens can have all sorts, they can kind of have both ends of the spectrum. A lot of kittens have diarrhea, and there's a lot of reasons that can happen. They can have parasites, they can have issues with the food that they're eating. Sometimes if they're weaned too fast or too young, they can have issues with just not being able to process it very well. They can also have viruses that cause diarrhea. So your question specifically was about constipation. That's something that I see a little bit less than diarrhea in kittens, but it definitely happens. So I would talk to your foster coordinator or vet and follow their advice. I definitely can't tell you what you should do at home with your constipated kitten, because the answer is always going to be talk to your vet. But I can say for us, you know, there are certain protocol that we follow. Diarrhea and constipation both involve making sure that they have enough hydration, because for both of those things, they need enough hydration. For, you know, diarrhea, they're purging fluid from their body, they need additional hydration. And constipation, sometimes, you know, they need extra hydration to help push that through, especially if they are on any kind of like laxative type drugs, which your vets can provide to you if they think that that is warranted. But in both cases, hydration is really important. So a simple thing you can do as a foster parent, if your kitten has either of those issues, is just like try to provide good fluid support. Something that anybody can do at home is get Pedialyte or some kind of like electrolyte solution. And if I'm working with a bottle baby, I'll switch from water to Pedialyte. Just give them some like extra electrolytes. But definitely you want to talk to a vet if your kitten is having issues with stool for more than, you know, 36 hours, especially like liquid diarrhea. You want to deal with that. You know, your job is to get them to have an A+ poop. You know, again, it's their report card, so we want them to have an A+. I mean, I don't know how much more you want to talk about poop. I can go into more detail, but I do think, unfortunately, the answer most of the time is you're going to have to investigate with the veterinary team, you know, because they can do a fecal exam and find out, is this a virus or is this a parasite? Or is this a 3-week-old kitten who you fed a can of food to and they're like, no, I'm not old enough for that yet, right? So there's a lot of different things that cause it, but if you deal with kittens, you're going to be dealing with poop, but it's okay. You'll figure it out.
I feel like so many of our kitten conversations revolve around poop. It's
Yeah,
like, look at
but
how cute it is. And
you know what? Like outside of the room that I'm in right now, we have like pictures of poop literally hanging on the wall to help our volunteers understand like the different kind of textures of poop and how to describe on the chart like what the poop looks like, because it really matters. You know,
it
if
does.
I have a
It
kitten
totally
who
does.
has diarrhea, that's not, you know, if you had a student who brought home a D on their report card, D for diarrhea, you wouldn't just go like, oh well, it'll probably fix itself. No, you would be like, we gotta, you know, get you a tutor, we gotta get you like studied, you know, and so you do that, but with poop.
No, that's actually, that analogy is fantastic, actually, especially for kittens. Poop as a report card is it's a great way of looking at it.
It is. So then you celebrate the A's. Exactly.
So following up on that, so you actually mentioned that sometimes feeding is what causes some of our troublesome tummies for our kittens. So we actually had a couple questions come through from our foster parents regarding feeding. So we're going to start super young kittens. And so we do get some questions regarding tube feeding, right?
Okay.
And what does that mean? Like, what is tube feeding for a kitten? You know, how does it work? You know, as a foster parent, should you be terrified of tube feeding? I mean, so just if you can talk us through kind of like what tube feeding is and how it functions to help benefit the kitten, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Yeah. So tube feeding is a skill that definitely I recommend learning from a person, like in person with someone. I've always contemplated making a video about it, but I just think it's not a responsible thing to teach online, because I really think it is a very valuable skill to have, but it's something that is best taught in person with, you know, your foster coordinator or a really experienced tube feeder or a veterinarian. But tube feeding, we use a red rubber tube. So it is like a really skinny tube. We use a 3.5 French is what it's called. And it's like a long skinny tube that has 2 little holes on the end of it. And it's something that you can use to kind of like go down through the kitten's esophagus, and it can feed the kitten directly without them having to consume the food. Tube feeding is not something that you should be doing for every kitten or even most kittens. It has like a really specific function for kittens, but it is something that can be a lifesaver when it's really needed. We use it in cases where a kitten, usually a neonatal kitten who just cannot, they can't suckle for some reason. Maybe they have a cleft palate. And so when they're consuming food, they're aspirating every single time. That would be a dangerous thing for a kitten where you would use a tube. Or if there's a kitten who is just going through some kind of disease process, or they're going through something really intently, a kitten who has panleukopenia, or a kitten who is just really struggling and needs to be receiving food, but needs to be receiving it in a way where they're not necessarily able to consume it themselves. We try to tube feed for as little as possible. So, might be 2 or 3 feedings, might be 2 or 3 days, but not usually longer than that. It's really like a stopgap for a kitten who's not able to consume food otherwise. But there are different cases where that might be something that you'd have to do. There are sometimes kittens who have oral ulcers, or kittens who have been burned on their tongue or something like that. It's painful for them to eat. So there's different times that we would use that. And when we do like small amounts of food, and we do, it's more dilute. But yeah, it's an awesome skill to have, but it is, there's risks involved in it. So you want to use that really wisely. More important, I think, even than that, is just knowing how to make sure your kittens stay really hydrated, because food is important, but hydration is arguably even more important. So a lot of the time, a kitten who's not eating, caloric intake is important, nutrition is important, but the hydration is the thing that's going to be more dangerous for them more quickly. So having the ability to give them additional fluid is definitely, that would be the number one skill set I would start with if you're a neonate foster parent who wants to get some of those additional skills. Getting somebody to train you how to do, giving additional oral fluids, but also subcutaneous fluids for neonates. That is a big skill to have.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I do want to acknowledge that set of questions came from Tanya, who is one of our foster parents. And having done the tube feeding thing, it is intimidating, but I agree. I think
it should be.
Yeah, it is a little scary.
Yeah, it should be. I've done it probably, thousands of times, and still every single time I do it, I'm like, okay, here we go. We're doing it, so it should not be taken lightly. I think it's a really, really good skill to have, but
Awesome. Thank you. So for those of you that are out there who are joining us today, who are interested in becoming foster parents, or, are current foster parents here at Michigan Humane, it is definitely something that we would love to have a chat with you about, in terms of, like Hannah said, kind of expanding your skill set and putting some more resources at everybody's fingertips. So moving on from our teeny tinies, right, who are normally the ones who would need the tube feeding support, we had a great question come from Karen, who was asking about latching and kind of getting ready to progress beyond the bottle. So she's got a couple 4-week-old kittens who, instead of latching, are chewing through the nipple on the bottle, which is lots of fun and leads to a lot of destroyed nipples. So she is trying to wean, but they aren't super interested in wet food just yet. So do you have any tips or tricks that you can provide us with for the weaning process as they transition from that bottle feeding into the space where they're starting to eat a little bit more solid food independent of the bottle?
Yes, weaning is my favorite subject other than poop, because I think it is such a vulnerable time for kittens, and people don't realize that. They're like, oh, they're a little older, so they're going to be easier. But weaning is actually a really vulnerable time for them. So with regard to chewing the nipple, I see that issue more with the thicker nipples, usually, that people have their kittens chewing it.
If a kitten is actually chewing off the end of a nipple, that can be a very dangerous thing, but they shouldn't be able to do that unless they have their premolars. So their premolars are the teeth on the side of the mouth that usually would be like the little scissor that's cutting off the end of the nipple. If they're doing that, that could become like an obstruction for them if they're swallowing that. So dangerous if they're doing that. But the good news is if they're doing that, they have their premolars, you should be able to get them weaning once they have those teeth. If they don't have their premolars, I don't recommend weaning them yet because their body is telling you, I'm not ready to be consuming meat quite yet. So every kitten is different, but one little tip, I use a nipple called a Miracle Nipple. It is like a product you have to buy online. It's not super affordable, honestly, but you can reuse them. You can sanitize them. So the Miracle Nipple Mini, I've never had a problem with them chewing. It's really nicely shaped it looks just like a cat nipple. It's a little bit more natural for them. So starting off with just get yourself like a couple Miracle Nipple Minis, and then just reuse them. You know, you can sanitize them, throw them in your dishwasher. And that should help with the biting issue. But if they're biting, they're wanting to bite something, I will actually, and I might even be able to show you with a kitten, because they are a little bit interested in food right now, but I will actually, like with my hand, scoop up a little bit of the wet kitten food. And as long as your kitten is like able to swallow, they're conscious, all of that, of course. Don't put food in a kitten's mouth if you don't think they can swallow, but I'll show you like this. So I will kind of open their mouth and I'll go scoop, and I'll scoop it onto the roof of their mouth like that. So like this, I'll have food on my finger, just a like tiny little dollop, and I'll go scoop, and I scoop it onto the roof of their mouth. And then typically what they'll do is go nom, 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 and they're like, wait, you could see a light bulb turn on in their brain, like, hang on, that was really good. And then what I try to do is as soon as I've scooped it onto the roof of their mouth, I get more and I just put it right in front of them. And they'll usually then try to bite it. And a lot of kittens need hand feeding like that. So a big lesson that I think is important for everybody who has weaning age kittens is it's not like you have a bottle baby and then you just put them in front of food and they just eat the food and you walk out of the room. You are like sitting there and hand feeding them. I know people who spoon feed because they think it's gross to pick up cat food. I don't know if I'm just like, I'm a gross person and I don't mind picking up cat food. But I think it's easier if you just pick it up. Like if you can just, even if you want to put on a glove or something, I don't know. Like for me, it's easier if I can just kind of like scoop, and then sort of hold it for them. Some kittens are going to do better with, if you mash up the food and add some, water to it or something like that. But for me, I actually find that my kittens often do better with like not mashing it. So like, you take the canned food out of the can and it's still in the shape of a can. I kind of like to like leave it like that or break off pieces of it. I call it doing meat corners. Everybody who like works with me knows if I say like, oh, that kitten needs meat corners, it means they need the like sharp edge of the, like it's in a shape, right? So there's like a 90-degree angle to the edge of where the food is. And that is something they can bite onto versus sort of it being like a mash. It's harder to find where they can bite onto it, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. Might be easier for me to just show you. But every kitten's different. So if you have a kitten and you're like, they really won't get onto the wet food, you can try kibble, like try kitten kibble with them. Try kitten kibble that's soaked in water. Try slurry where you mix the formula with the food and mash it up. Try meat corners, which is what honestly, that's my number one thing that I do is the meat corners. I just like pick it up and show them the edge of it, giving them a little scoop on the roof of their mouth to encourage them. But probably my greatest weaning tip is weigh your kittens while they're weaning. I know everybody thinks you don't have to weigh them anymore because they're not a little tiny baby, but you'll notice kittens start to go down in weight when they're weaning if they're not, if they're weaned too quickly. So that can be really, really dangerous for them. And you can't always visually see that they're losing weight. So weigh your kittens, work with them hands-on, and it never is a rush to wean. they have the rest of their lives to eat solid foods. So you can always supplement them with a bottle afterwards. And, sometimes it's instant, sometimes it takes 2 weeks for them to wean, and that's okay. It's all at their pace.
I agree. I think that's one of the most important things to keep in mind is everybody's going to wean at their own pace. And so sometimes it takes time.
And speaking see this of really cute Fluffy really fast. This is Dart.
I was telling Hannah earlier that I have a black cat obsession, and she's been teasing me to the point where I'm just going to go hop on a plane to San Diego.
I have so many black kittens in this room, and they're my favorite too. So
send them to Michigan. I will happily take all of them. But speaking of time, I don't know about you guys. I could listen to Hannah talk all day long. And I will confess that on times when I'm stuck with my fosters, I have listened to Hannah's videos for hours. So we are pretty much out of time for our Q&A. So Hannah, I just want to give you a chance, if there's anything, any final thoughts regarding kittens and fostering and how we can support our teeny tiny felines that you want to leave folks with before we close out the Q&A and kind of move into the next bit.
Sure. I mean, the thing that I would say to anybody who's watching this is you can help kittens. You can find a way to help kittens. Maybe that's becoming a foster parent. And I would say if you're feeling like you're not so sure, just sign up, talk to somebody, try it once. That's how you're going to find out what it's like is, try it once. And you might be surprised and amazed by what you can do. If you really are not in a place to foster, you can support foster parents by purchasing an item from the wish list. If you go to michiganhumane.org/Kitten Shower, the same place that you went to register for this event, they have a wish list. That makes a huge, huge difference. Like if you can just buy an item from the Kitten Shower wish list, because then people like me who foster, if you are a foster parent for Michigan Humane, you're going to have that support, and that support can be provided by, everybody on this call. So there is a way for everybody to help out, whether that's making a monetary donation, buying an item from a wish list, signing up to foster, telling other people about it, just talking about this, sharing resources. There is such a great need, and especially this time of year during kitten season, it's really all hands on deck. So I would say if you're watching this, commit to doing one thing today to help kittens, whether that is buying an item from the wish list, sharing a video online, signing up to foster for Michigan Humane, or if you're not from Michigan, sign up to foster locally. It all helps. Every single piece of it helps. And I just want to say thank you for having me here. I could talk to you all day. And I just am so amazed by the work that you're doing, and so excited for all that you're going to do in the future. And I can't wait to watch the kitten cam that you guys have. Because even though I'm surrounded by kittens, there's never enough.
There are never enough kittens. That is completely correct. So, Hannah, thank you. I don't know if we've got an opportunity. I legit feel like I just want to have you come to Michigan for a week.
I would love that. Can we do summer?
Yes, Dr. Funky, do you want to? We'll figure this out. Dr. Funky is head of our kitten project here at Michigan Humane, and she is an additional valuable resource for all of us here. So Dr. Funky will be continuing this conversation regarding kitten care, how you can support kittens. Like Hannah said, if you're in a position to foster, we would love to have you part of that team. And Hannah, just thank you for advocating for all of our itty bitty felines so much. And thank you for taking time out of your Sunday at what is a very, very early time in California to hang out and answer questions about poop and constipation and weaning and nipples and all of the things.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, folks. So we did promise during the Kitten Shower that we were going to introduce you to the kittens that are in our playpen. And also we have some fun prizes to give away as well. So we are actually going to start with our raffle prizes. So I believe we have 3 prizes to give away, and we will bum, ba, bum, bum, bum. Okay, so our very first prize to give away today is actually a Kitty A Go-Go designer litter box. You're seeing it For me, here it is on the left-hand side of my screen with some lovely polka dots. Everybody should have polka dots for spring. It's a thing. So the Kitty Go-Go, it is a large capacity litter tray that sits in a pull-out drawer. So if you are interested in not having to pull out liners and all those sorts of things, the pull-out drawer is a great way to make your cleanup quick and easy. It's got ventilation slots, keeps the litter area fresh, and it includes a built-in scoop and handle so that you're able to clean your litter box with ease. And so out of the folks that registered for the shower today, the winner, dun, 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 of this particular prize is Allison Peck. So Allison, if you are on the call with us, please go ahead and drop us a quick message and we will make arrangements to get your Kitty A-Go-Go designer litter box over to you. So congratulations, Allison. If you guys have not had a chance to see the Kitty A-Go-Go in person, it is a pretty cool, pretty cool litter box to have in your home and relatively stylish, which I think is also pretty important. So the second item that we have to give away during today's raffle is a handmade quilt. So it is the center photo for those of you that are looking on our speaker view right now. It is handmade, features ridiculously adorable kittens doing kitten things. And I'm a little jealous that I don't get to have this in my house, but I wasn't eligible for the raffle because I work here. So the winner of today's kitten quilt is Heather, and I'm going to butcher this last name, so please bear with me here. Is it Herdell? It's H-E-R-D-E-L. So Heather, if you are on the call with us today, please drop us a message and we'll make arrangements to get that quilt to you, unless it comes to my house first. All right, and last, but certainly not least, we know that you guys love your kittens, and we hope that you love Michigan Humane and the work that we're doing as well. So the third raffle prize for today is a $100 gift card to our Michigan Humane shop, where you can pick up swag for you, swag for your pet, and share with folks, like Hannah mentioned, as a way to get that conversation started about supporting cats, kittens, dogs, puppies, turtles, rabbits, you name it, here at Michigan Humane. So the winner of that $100 gift card is Olivia Jimenez. So Olivia, if you are, oh great. Olivia, if you are on the call, please drop us a note and we will make arrangements to get that gift card to you. Heather, I am so excited I pronounced that correctly because I'm usually terrible with names. So that makes me super happy. All right, folks, so it is time now for us to meet our Purina Kitten Cam friends. So these three kittens are currently hanging out in our playpen at our Berman Center for Animal Care in Westland. So these three kittens are just three of the hundreds that are benefiting from our kitten project this year. They came to us as orphans. They did not have a mom. They were actually very sick at the time that they arrived in care with us. So they have been in the care of a loving foster mom for the last several weeks, who has been providing them with food and litter and snuggles and medications and all of the things. So I am actually going to turn it over to mom, Valerie, and Valerie is going to introduce our three kittens to you all.
Can you guys hear me? All right, so I'm going to introduce you to my fosters, starting with this sweet little girl right here. I'm gonna give you some details about each one. So this is, we'll do a drum roll for this little lady. This little girl is Ellie. So I know you guys were picking out names on Facebook and that was the one that you selected. So that is her name. She is super adventurous and really sweet. She likes to just like cuddle up on your shoulder kind of a thing. I know we're running out of time, so we will move on to the next little kitten. All right, so the fluffiest of the three. Next, we have this little cutie. So this one's name is Oliver. Super cute. I think it fits him really well. He is super shy and just likes to cuddle up. All right, and then last but not least, oops, kittens are pressing buttons on my screen. I apologize. Last but not least, we have Miss Molly. She is super cute as well. And she is the most adventurous of the bunch. She likes to climb on all of the things and scratch all of the things. So She has been a fun one to foster. All right. And Anna,
Now,
oh, there you go.
now, Val, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe Mr. Oliver might already have a home. Is that correct?
He does. So it's really cool about fostering. I get to introduce them to people along the way. And oftentimes I can find at least one person to adopt while I'm fostering. So that is definitely a benefit. So he has
Right, I will say that is one of my favorite parts about fostering is being able to send my foster animals home with people I know so I can keep tabs on them. It makes me super happy.
Like, send me pictures. I need to visit. So that is super exciting.
Now, if you do want to meet Oliver's siblings, they will be available for adoption tomorrow at our Berman Center for Animal Care in Westland. And you can find more information about the adoption process, hours, all of that at michiganhumane.org. Thank you, Val, for being a foster parent and for taking home those cutie pie kittens. And the Community Kitten Cam is going to stay live for the next little while. So you guys will be able to keep an eye on them as they continue to frolic and play and be silly. All right, folks. So the next thing we are going to move into is actually kind of the meat and potatoes of today, which is talking about kitten care here at Michigan Humane and how you can become a part of the team that is providing second chances and new beginnings for all of these itty bitty little felines. So we are actually going to be moving into a kitten care presentation with the head of our kitten project, Dr. Funky. But before we do that, if you are not able to join us for the kitten care presentation, that is totally fine. We appreciate you attending. Thank you again to Hannah for just being stellar and amazing and a phenomenal resource for all of us who are invested in kittens here in Michigan and really across the country. Thank you to everybody that has sent us a registry item. Matt shared that number with you earlier today. Every single one of those items is making a difference in a kitten's life. So please, if you're able to participate in the registry, again, that's at michiganhumane.org/kitten shower. You can also drop donations directly off to any one of our facilities listed on our website, and we would be more than happy to put them to good use in supporting our kitten friends. So if you are going to stick around for our kitten care presentation, I hope you do. We are going to take just a minute to get set up for that. And if folks are not going to be staying for the kitten care presentation, you are welcome to log off at this time. Again, thank you for joining us, and we really appreciate it. And we hopefully get to see your faces real soon at one of our facilities, perhaps as a foster parent for some of these lovely kittens. Thanks again, guys. And Dr. Funky, you just let me know when you are ready to go, and we will be starting that kitten care presentation. All right, folks, so just to give you a quick introduction, like I mentioned earlier, Dr. Funky is the head of our kitten project here at Michigan Humane. She is a wealth of knowledge on all things kitten and has really kind of led the charge in making sure that our teeny tiny felines are getting everything that they could possibly need through the program. So Dr. Funky, if you want to go ahead and we'll work through the presentation, and then we are holding questions until the end, correct?
Yeah, if people have additional follow-up questions on either like the foster presentation or just general kitten care questions that maybe Hannah couldn't get to, then I'm happy to answer them at the end of the presentation, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, so thanks for joining me today. We're all here to learn a little bit more about fostering orphan kittens through our foster program called In-Home Heroes. I'm Dr. Clarissa Funky. So why does the Michigan Humane Society need a foster program geared specifically towards orphan kittens? Well, every spring and summer, we receive hundreds of them. When these kittens come into the shelter, in addition to all the adult animals that we're regularly caring for, it can place an added strain on the resources of the shelter system. Kittens also have some unique needs that make it difficult for us to care for them in the shelter. The youngest kittens may need to be fed more frequently than is possible when we aren't open for 24 hours. And kittens have weaker immune systems that can make them more prone to getting sick in a shelter situation, not unlike kids going to daycare for the first time. Before we get into talking about the kittens themselves, I just want to take a moment to share a little bit more about our foster program. When you sign up to be a foster with us, we will provide you with all the medical care, supplies, training, and support you might need. As a foster, you're committing to be attentive to their needs, provide them with a safe space to grow, be available to bring them in for veterinary care, and of course, provide lots of love. If you think you're interested in fostering with us, you can visit the Michigan Humane Society's website at michiganhumane.org/foster, where you can find more information and fill out an online application. We have foster services available at our Detroit, Westland, Rochester, and Howell locations, and care can be transferred between locations for your convenience. When you're ready for kittens, you can fill out a survey about which locations you can pick up from and what age kittens you're comfortable taking. When kittens come into the shelter, we'll call you and let you know that they're ready to pick up. If you aren't sure that kittens are the right type for you, we will also send out daily email lists with all the different types of animal that are available to foster throughout our shelters. All right, so now let's move on to the fun stuff, and we can actually talk about what's involved in taking care of young orphan kittens. So when we talk about orphan kittens, to me, it helps to divide them by the stage that they are at developmentally. At our shelter, we prefer to do this rather than just talking about them by their age group, because just like children, kittens are all unique and they can have a lot of variation in when they reach different milestones. So the youngest kittens are typically referred to as bottle kittens, which can be anywhere from 0 to 5 weeks of age. They're too young to eat any solid food, and they rely solely on bottle feeding. They also need stimulation to be able to go to the bathroom and require a heat source to keep warm. The second group of kittens are Gerber kittens, which is pretty much a transitional stage. These kittens can be anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks old and are just learning to eat solid food, but haven't really figured it out yet. So they may need their food softened, they might need supplemental bottle feedings, or they may need some physical assistance with eating. They're also learning to use the litter box and starting to move around more. The oldest group of kittens are graduates, which are usually between 5 to 8 weeks old and can eat solid food pretty independently, and they're independent in most other ways as well. They have a lot of energy and they want to play, but they're still too young to be spayed or neutered and go up for adoption. And we don't want them sitting in the shelter during that time because they typically can't do that until they're about 8 weeks of age or 2 pounds. So we're going to go more through each of these different groups, and we're going to talk about bottle kittens first, and we can start by reviewing some of the pros and cons of fostering this age group. So bottle babies typically need to be fed somewhere between every 2 to 5 hours, depending on how old they are when you take them. And you can expect that you're going to need to wake up at least once a night to feed them. Because they're more fragile, they may require more frequent vet checks than the older groups. And unfortunately, because of this, they do have a higher mortality rate. So you can expect that if you're fostering a lot, you might lose one eventually. Despite this, bottle babies can be really so rewarding to watch grow up, and they're great for anyone who enjoys nurturing. Since they aren't mobile yet, they can basically live in a small carrier, which is easy to tote around with you if you're on the go a lot. They go to the bathroom on a tissue paper, so they're pretty clean. And they're of course like the cutest. So if you love the idea of bottle kittens, but like if you feel more intimidated by them, you could also consider fostering one of our nursing moms who will often do most of the work for you. So if you notice that this picture is not a kitten, congratulations, you have passed the initial test to become a foster. This is actually a neonatal puppy, but he volunteered to model how we weigh kittens on a gram scale in the shelter. So when we take care of bottle kittens, it's going to be important to develop a care routine and do it consistently the same way every time. That's usually going to consist of weighing them, feeding them, helping them go to the bathroom, and ensuring their heat source is still warm before you put them back in the carrier. It's important to establish this as a pattern and do it consistently, as the weight can fluctuate based off of when they ate in the process and if they've gone to the bathroom already. And then you always want to make sure that you're writing everything down, because it can be really easy to lose track of who did what or how much they weighed, especially if you have a few of them that might look alike. So now we're going to go into the different parts of this care routine in more detail. And the first one that everybody wants to hear about is usually feeding. It's important that you remember that you're always going to use a commercial kitten formula and never feed kittens cow's milk. At our shelter, we like to use powdered kitten milk replacer mixed with water or sometimes Pedialytes according to the label instructions. It's important to refrigerate the powder once it's been opened and to remember not to mix up more than a 24-hour supply. When you're ready for a feeding, you want to heat the formula until it's warm, but not too hot. That can be done by floating it in a coffee cup of hot water or by microwaving it for just a few seconds at a time. You want to make sure to swirl it to get rid of any hot spots and check it on your wrist to make sure it's a comfortable temperature. Older bottle kittens can use a bottle, but for the youngest bottle babies, we prefer to use a syringe with a nipple attachment like in the picture for better control. You'll always want to feed your kittens belly down and never on their backs like a human baby, as they could choke on the milk in this position since it's not natural for them and not how they would nurse on a mother. I like to use my non-dominant hand to guide the kitten's head and keep it centered on the nipple. You want to make sure that you're not squirting the milk in the kitten's mouth. If the kitten's getting a good latch, it should be able to suck the milk with minimal assistance from you. It can take new orphans about 24 to 48 hours to learn how to get a good latch. While they're figuring it out, you can encourage them by very slowly dripping a little milk onto their mouths from the nipple. After a few feedings this way, a light bulb will usually go off in their head and they just magically kind of start to latch and pull the milk on their own. You can tell that a kitten has a good latch when they make a U shape around the nipple with their tongue. They may also flick their ears and whiskers as they're nursing. When you sign up to foster with us, we can also give you a one-on-one coaching session on feeding, as well as a copy of our kitten care guide, which contains helpful weight and feeding charts by age. So this next clip is a pretty grainy video that I took from my phone, but it just kind of shows what it looks like when a kitten has a good latch. So you can see when they get really excited, they kind of fight you a little bit, and that's why we use our hands to guide them. But after he gets in there, he just latches on his own. This kitten is being fed from a syringe because they tend to prefer that. This one litter tended to prefer that, but she's not really pushing much with the syringe. The kitten is actually moving the syringe down on his own. We try not to overfeed them and let them release when they're ready so that you don't accidentally squirt too much milk into their mouths and potentially aspirate them. So now we can kind of go through the other parts of the bottle kitten care routine. To help them go potty, we usually will kind of wad up a handful of soft tissue and gently rub their genitals in a circular motion. Kittens will typically go pee every time this is done, but may poop less, even potentially up to every 2 to 3 days. Although, as Hannah said, it's more normal if we can get it every 24 to 48 hours. While it might seem a little bit weird to talk about, it's really important to know what normal kitten pee and poop should look like because it can be a really good indicator of their health. Normal kitten urine should be almost clear to straw colored, and the poop should be about the consistency of soft serve ice cream. If the urine's a darker yellow color, it could be an indication that the kitten is dehydrated, and kittens can be prone to developing both diarrhea and constipation. So if you notice any of these things, you should bring them in for our vets to look at. The other really good indicator of kitten health is going to be the daily weight gain, which is why we want to make sure that we're weighing them at least daily. Kittens should be gaining on average 10 to 15 grams per day. You want to make sure you're using a food scale so that you can get the measurement in grams, because a larger measurement like pounds or ounces could miss subtle weight fluctuations in really small kittens. Finally, you want to make sure that you're providing a heat source for any kitten that's under 3 weeks of age, since they lack a shiver response and can't generate enough body heat on their own. We typically will use either a microwavable heating disc, which can hold heat for somewhere between 8 to 12 hours, or a saline bag, which will hold heat for 3 to 4 hours when microwaved. We usually don't use heating pads or heating lamps. It can be really easy to allow the enclosure to get too hot with kittens when you use these. And even though we want to keep them warm, we don't want to cook them. In a small carrier, we want to make sure that there's an area that kittens can move away from the heat if they're too warm. And we always want to wrap the heat source in something to protect them a little bit from it, like a soft blanket to prevent direct contact. All right, now we can move on and talk about Gerber kittens, which are our next stage. These are those 3 to 6 week old kittens that are in transition and sort of just learning how to eat solids. And since solid foods last longer in the GI tract, they typically can go further between feedings. So this could be a good choice for those that struggle with the overnight feeding aspects of bottle kittens. The trade-off is that a softened liquid food diet is stinky, and Gerber kittens are often much messier than bottle kittens, so you really need to be prepared to devote a significant amount of time to cleaning up after them. They're also just starting to use a litter pan and move around more, so they lose a little bit of their portability and they start to need a larger area. They are a little bit less fragile than the bottle babies, although the diet transition can still be a struggle with diarrhea and illness. So this is what a typical setup would look like for some of our younger Gerber kittens. This is a guinea pig cage actually, but it allows a little bit more space now that they need access to a litter pan, but they can rest somewhere separate and they have a separate eating area. But it keeps them from getting lost or into trouble. So we find that this works really well, especially if you're still kind of toting them back and forth with you. We do try to avoid using dog crates because we find that the metal bars are spaced such that the occasional kitten can squeeze out or even get their head stuck between the bars. Some fosters prefer either modular playpens or like the pop-up tent kind, and we do try to offer those options as well, if that is your preference. You want to make sure that everything that you're putting in the cage is shallow enough that they can access it. So if they're starting to eat food, like using either a paper plate or a really low-sided bowl, and making sure that the litter box is low enough that they can actually climb over it, are going to be really important things to consider. We also recommend for kittens this age to use a pelleted newspaper litter, as the clay clumping litter we find really gets stuck in between their toes and can be really hard to pick out in these really young kittens. All right, so let's go into a little bit more detail about feeding. So you may have noticed in the beginning of this that the age overlap between Gerber kittens and the other stages is there. And that's because Gerber kittens are defined by their dependence on semi-solid food like gruel. And some kittens are able to kind of skip this stage altogether and just transition directly from a bottle or from mom onto can or dry food. This is actually the preferred method because gruel can be really messy and cause GI upset in kittens who are maybe transitioning onto it younger than they should. So I'm sure that you're wondering why we talk about this stage or feed this at all in that case. And that's because in the shelter situation, we might get kittens that are orphaned a little bit later than like the traditional bottle baby kittens. And we get a lot of them that are kind of in this like awkward phase where they've really become accustomed to only nursing on a mom and they have a very hard time adjusting to a bottle after they've been nursing on mom for so long. But they're not quite old enough to figure out how to eat solid food either. So they end up in kind of this no man's land where we're just kind of trying to find something that they can eat to kind of keep on weight in the meantime. So a lot of times we will soften the canned food by mixing it with formula, and that can make it taste more familiar. And the texture can be easier for kittens who are kind of sucking on the food more than chewing yet. Some kittens may still need to be even hand or syringe fed to help them figure the whole process out. They also often need baths after feedings because they're gonna walk through the stuff and get it all over themselves and their enclosure. So it's really important to bathe them really regularly after feedings because the gruel is a really good medium for bacteria to grow in it. So you don't want to leave it on their skin because it can cause rashes. And if they're grooming themselves, it can cause diarrhea. So bathing them really frequently is going to be really important at this age. All right, so I have another video here of what it looks like when you're trying to teach a kitten how to hand feed gruel. These were a really challenging case of kittens that came in that were definitely like too young to be eating gruel or really should have been bottle kittens, but just absolutely refused to latch. So we were just kind of struggling and trying to get them to eat anything, but you can kind of see what like the process looks like. So you can see that the kitten, it wants the food. You can't figure out that the food's coming from the bowl though. So it's just kind of exploring around. Oh, it's found its water bowl instead. So I'm just going to keep using my fingers to kind of redirect the kitten to where the food's actually coming from. And these poor kittens were really underweight too when they came to us. But you can see as time goes on, he kind of figures out where the food is coming from. As Kitten Lady kind of alluded to, it's going to be really important when you're kind of going through this awkward phase to weigh them, sometimes even before and after each feeding, to make sure that they're getting adequate calories in food into them, because sometimes they can just look like they're eating, but not actually be consuming much. All right, so on that note, let's talk a little bit more about bathing. We typically recommend using something mild like Dawn dish soap or baby shampoo to bathe your kittens in. I will typically fill up a sink or even an empty litter pan with shallow water to make sure that the kitten can stand in it or sit comfortably without risk of submerging the nose. You want to make sure that the water temperature is comfortable. I always try and hand wash their face with like a damp rag to help protect their eyes and nose. And while these guys might not need a heat source consistently anymore, you still want to be careful that they don't become too chilled post-bath. So I will usually towel dry them pretty thoroughly and provide them with a supplemental heat source to cuddle with until they're no longer damp. Alternatively, you could use a hair dryer, but you want to be really careful if you do this method. The hair dryer can get too hot on their bodies, just the same way I'm sure if you've used a hair dryer on yourself and you hold it in one spot for too long. So you want to make sure that you use it on the lowest setting, and you kind of want to keep a hand between you and the kitten to kind of feel when that temperature might be getting too hot. All right, so now we can kind of move on to talking about the last stage of kittens, which we call graduates. So care for this age of kitten is more self-explanatory than the earlier groups, but there's still some special things that we want to give consideration to. At this age, they really need a room that can be devoted to them, like a spare bathroom or bedroom or laundry room. I would be hesitant to give these kittens unsupervised run of your entire house because they could still get lost or trapped, and that much space can be challenging for a young kitten to find its litter box consistently in. The room should be large enough to allow separation of eating, resting, and litter box activities. It's also helpful if the room is easy to wipe down, although some of my fosters have gotten really creative, and in like carpeted bedrooms, they've put down heavy plastic tarping and other different things. You also want to make sure that the area is kitten proof so that you don't end up with kittens in your washer and dryer. I usually like to pay special attention to electrical wires, which can be attractive for kittens to chew on, houseplants that could be toxic, and areas that they might become stuck in. So you can see this picture here where you kind of see your graduate kittens playing in the washer and dryer. I promise that in this picture, no kittens were actually injured, but those kind of things are really important to kind of consider in these scenarios. So we're going to kind of move on now and talk a little bit about kitten health problems. I think the important thing to remember is that you need to be proactive. So because kittens are so small, health problems can escalate quickly. And if you notice something is off with your kittens, you want to make sure that you're scheduling a vet check sooner rather than later. This can be really counterintuitive because with older animals, and I think even with ourselves sometimes, we'll often wait if we have like a minor health problem to see if it resolves on its own before seeking medical attention. But you just can't do that with kittens because their health problems can escalate so quickly because they're so small. So some of the things that we want to monitor for are decreased appetite, weight loss, diarrhea, which by far is the most common health problem that we deal with in young kittens, as well as vomiting. We also want to watch out for constipation, which is mostly like a bottle age kitten issue because of the formula, as well as upper respiratory infections where you may notice sneezing or nasal discharge. And sometimes this can be associated with conjunctivitis or an eye infection. In some bottle kittens, we also see issues with them trying to nurse on each other, which can cause different kinds of skin problems for the kitten that might be getting suckled on. We also want to watch out for hair loss because while it's not super common in this area, kittens can be carriers of ringworm, which is a fungal skin infection that people could also catch with prolonged contact. All right, so just to kind of take you a little bit through the wellness care, when you pick up foster kittens with us, you're typically going to be expected to schedule their next veterinary appointment. If you're taking kittens with ongoing medical concerns like upper respiratory infections, the date of your next visit might be just based on when the medications are complete. But if they don't have any health concerns and they're just weight gain kittens, they're typically going to be due back when they're due for their next wellness appointment. So you can expect that it's going to be coming in at least every 2 weeks. In the shelter, we'll typically see kittens back for boosters every 2 weeks. And at that time, we'll often administer dewormers and perform weight checks and just kind of like a general wellness check on them. Once they reach 2 pounds, which is usually at the 8-week mark, if they don't have any ongoing health concerns, then they are old enough, they're sent for spay-neuter surgery, and then they can actually go up for adoption. So this brings us to the last part, which is the bittersweet topic of talking about saying goodbye to your fosters. I think a lot of people will say that they can't foster because they couldn't bear to say goodbye. And I think it's really important to remember that saying goodbye isn't a negative thing. This is how you save their lives. Our kitten program saves hundreds of kittens every year, and it simply wouldn't be possible without a small army of fosters who were brave enough to share a little piece of their heart and then say goodbye so that they could help the next kitten in need. If you're interested in becoming one of our in-home heroes, you can sign up at michiganhumane.org/foster. And if you have more questions about caring for kittens or our foster program, I am available directly after this for a Q&A session. And I would like to add that we do have the locations in Detroit, Rochester, and Wesleyan, but we also have a location in Powell. All right, who has questions?
Thanks, Dr. Funky. So we have several questions. So what I would like to do, folks, I'm going to start back at the beginning of the chat from the presentation, and we're just going to kind of go through and just answer some of these as the best we can. So I actually wanted to, okay.
You take control back so I can turn my camera on so I can see.
Oh.
I don't know how to do it.
If you want to exit share mode, so.
Oh, I see it.
We should, got it? Okay, fantastic. So we are actually-
Technology is hard for me.
It's hard for me too, no worries. So one of the questions I feel like, Dr. Funky, this also came up with Hannah earlier that we just didn't have time to get to, is the balance of fostering versus your real life, right? So for a lot of our foster parents or folks that are interested in fostering, they've got a full-time job, they go to school, they work, they've got families.
You don't want to hear this about going to.
So what is your recommendation for finding ways to balance and take on fostering in addition to all of the commitments you have in your normal life?
So I would say that like bottle kittens, we really love those fosters, and there's a lot of people who come up with really creative ways to be able to foster that age group of kittens. So some people will bring them into work with them, right? If you have an employer that's willing to let you do that. If you are like a student that's learning remotely right now, obviously, you know, like, or you are at home most of the time, those are all really good options. However, they're not the only age group that we need help with. So there's a couple different alternatives that you consider if like bottle kittens like just won't fit with your lifestyle. So you could consider taking like older age groups of kittens, like the graduates, or maybe like an older Gerber kitten. You could take a nursing mom so that you still get to have like the neonates around, but like the mom's going to do the middle of the night feedings. And if you have to be gone for a period where you can't take them with you for more than a few hours, then most of the times the moms are going to help you out with that. And then we also, like, if you're not comfortable with any of those age groups, we have older kittens that sometimes just have like cat colds or upper respiratory infections that are like cattens or teenage kittens that people can take as well, because we usually won't adopt them out till they're recovered, and it's just kind of like a week or two of giving them medication.
Awesome. So following that, we also got we had one question earlier and then one that came up during your presentation talking about when you're bringing foster kittens home and you maybe have resident cats or resident dogs, what are some tips and tricks to help make sure that everybody's kind of comfortable when the kittens first come into the home? I know that we do talk a lot about, keeping kittens separate just because they are a lot more delicate and prone to picking up some interesting things sometimes from older animals. So what would you suggest for folks if they've got resident pets? What's the easiest way to transition those kittens into the home?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little different based off of the age of the kitten again and what their housing situation is going to be like, but I think it's important to have a dedicated foster space that's separate from your own animals. We do recommend quarantining animals that are like of the same species. So like cat to kitten sort of situations for a minimum of 2 weeks, just to make sure that they're not going to develop any contagious disease that they could spread to your animal. Dogs don't really need the same kind of quarantine period when you're exposing it to like a kitten or a cat. But it's important to do any of those kind of introductions pretty slowly. Not all adult cats are going to be thrilled about sharing their space with a kitten. Mine weren't in the past when I have fostered kittens, but I have a separate bathroom that's kind of off the beaten path from like the main part of my house that I'm able to keep them in. To kind of keep them separated. And then as they get older, sometimes the cats will accept them more, or you might have like some cats like love foster kittens and they'll like stimulate them for you and stuff. So there's no one size fit all, but you just want to make sure that you're introducing them in a safe way where you can kind of gauge their reaction before they're close enough to interact with each other. You don't want to force it. Allow them to kind of explore each other from a distance first, and then they want to get closer, they can. With dogs, you also just want to be careful because of their size sometimes. Even well-intentioned dogs can sometimes like hurt a kitten trying to play with it. So you just want to kind of take it slowly and know your pet, right? And how they're kind of going to react.
So we got a couple of questions regarding supplies. So can you talk us through in terms of what Michigan Humane would provide for foster parents, and then what the options are for foster parents to provide supplemental supplies? So I know we got some questions about some of Hannah's things that she has in her setup because that sunflower toy I really want for my kittens. But just in general, so we talked a little bit about Michigan Humane supplying like the vet care and medications and all that kind of stuff. What other supplies can a foster parent expect to receive if they choose to foster with us? And then what would they be expected to provide on their own?
Yeah, so we pretty much provide everything that's essential that you might need. I mean, if you want to buy like a sunflower toy, because it's like extra, like you can do that. But we do even provide like the stuffed kittens that like purr or have a heartbeat to like kind of that they can cuddle with, that gives them some of like the enrichment mom would provide. But we provide all the food, all the formula. A lot of times if we have it, we'll provide Pedialyte. Occasionally I'll be like a kitten will need something really specific that we don't have. Like our typical diets, every once in a while we'll use Breeder's Edge instead of KMR. And I've had fosters purchase that on their own if they're like not doing well on KMR and want to switch to Breeder's Edge. But this year we registered for that as well. So we try and get enough of everything that people don't have to go buy anything on their own. We provide the carriers. We provide the larger enclosures that people would need. We have like a lot of our stuff comes from the Kitten Lady website because she's really good at kind of screening products and letting us know kind of what things work really well. I'm kind of like a Kitten Lady geek, so I get a lot of stuff from her. And so, yeah, a lot of the stuff is stuff that she already recommends. We don't have a lot of incubators to provide people. That would be really cool. We have one, which we use mostly in shelter.
Yes, if anybody's interested in donating some incubators, I'm sure some of our neonate fosters would not say no to having access to them. So in addition to that, I mean, obviously, Michigan Humane, you know, we provide the food, we provide dishes, we provide all of those items for you as well.
Litter.
Yeah, litter, scales, especially for ittiest of biddies, you know, who need to do the 2 or 3 times a day weight checks and things like that. So those are all provided for you as well. Medications, blankets, towels. So if it's a foster item that is essential for your kitten's health and well-being, we will provide it for you. Additional items, I will say I have definitely caved and bought, you know, condos and scratching posts, and I think depending on the level of your commitment as a foster and, you know, what you are interested in providing for your kittens beyond the basics, it's really up to you kind of what you want to purchase at that point as a supplement.
We'll even provide like supplies to between and disinfect between litters. So like it's really a pretty comprehensive list of things that you can get from us to care for them. The heat sources, all that kind of stuff. We do provide miracle nipples as well. We also provide the veterinary care. I feel like that's a really important part of it because we don't expect you to go outside of our organization to provide veterinary care. So all of it is provided in-house. When you need an appointment, you can schedule through our foster coordinator. We are really accommodating because especially considering the nature of kittens and like they need to be seen right away sometimes. So we're really great at accommodating like urgent requests to be seen. And we also provide emergency triage care. So it's a little bit limited. The veterinarian is usually on call by the phone, but a staff member can meet with you after hours and do the physical exam and call the vet and talk about treatments and stuff like that if you have a kitten that's like not doing well in the middle of the night.
So as a follow-up, because Marissa, I saw your question dropped in there. So as a follow-up, Dr. Frankie, you've mentioned a couple of times about sometimes our kittens are sick. And sometimes they come to us sick, sometimes they develop an illness while they're in foster care, things like that. So can you talk us through a little bit about, you just touched on, you know, disinfecting between litters and things like that. So can you talk us through a little bit about, I feel like there are times when fostering kind of carries a stigma of the only thing that you're bringing home is ill and it's got something that you can catch and all that sort of stuff. So can you talk us through a little bit about what we generally see with our kittens and then what resources we provide in terms of being able to move from litter to litter safely for fosters?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is true that I think that kittens, I mean, well, it is true that kittens get sick more than adults do in any sort of situation. But like in a shelter situation, they're exposed to a little bit more germs, right? And that's something that we try and avoid as much as possible. That's why we have a foster program, because the shelter isn't like the place that they belong. But that being said, I mean, there's still plenty of kittens that we have that just do absolutely fine and have like no health problems right throughout their like stay. But if you're going to foster enough just by numbers, you have to be prepared that eventually you're going to get 1 or 2 that might be sick or have a health struggle. And you want to make sure that you at least have the availability to be able to come in for like their appointments and stuff like that. As far as between litters, that was like kind of the other part of the question, right? So yeah, we provide like the main concern I think between litters is really panleukopenia, which is a virus that kittens can get that can be really contagious, and it can live in your environment for a long time. It's not typically something that's contagious to other adult cats that are well vaccinated, but it can be a concern because it can, like, in addition to just being heartbreaking for that litter, it can kind of take out a foster for the rest of the kitten season, which can be devastating because, I mean, they can, one foster, if they do 2 or 3 smaller litters, that's like 12 kittens in a year, right? So Yeah, we try to keep them in like an area that can be easily disinfected. So, and like when they're little kittens, right, it would be kind of keeping them like in a structured carrier that can be disinfected between litters, or if it's not a structured carrier, then at least we can toss it. And it hasn't been like on every carpet and rug in your house and those areas that are like hard to clean. You know, in the shelter, we try and use with PPE, so personal protective equipment like gloves and gowns to prevent transmission. But if you're gonna have them out, trying to keep them on clothes that you're gonna wash and not like on other surfaces of your house is really helpful, at least until they've been in your house for a while and we feel confident that they're not gonna like break with that disease.
All right, folks, so we do have a couple more minutes with Dr. Funky. If you do have other questions, we are asking you to drop them in the chat. It's just a little easier for us to manage and be able to make sure that we're answering everybody's stuff. So I know, so Kat had dropped in a question about donations. So I know Julia is going to address yours specifically, but just in general. So going back to the donation question originally, registry items are always welcome. They're actually welcome year round. Whenever, if you're able to donate, that is fantastic. But a lot of our supplies are also a little bit more, you know, generic. We are always welcoming, you know, dog crates of all different sizes. The larger, the better, especially for kittens. We can also use rabbit cages for kittens. Those are great. Dr. Frankie, I know you had mentioned earlier, the ferret cages. One of my favorite items for kittens is a tri-level ferret cage. Super easy to disinfect, super easy to keep an eye on everybody.
Yeah.
And it's portable, which is lovely.
And actually, with our kitten cam video, you can see some of the like kind of modular enclosures that we sometimes use. Those are really nice. And I actually got that one from Kitten Lady. I think that's the one that she recommends registering for. But those are nice too, because like if you have like a litter of kittens where you kind of have to separate them from each other because they're really suckling on each other, they can still see each other through the like their plasticky sort of glass, so that they can kind of still like cuddle up against the sides, which I think like gives them a little bit more comfort.
So Andrea, I saw your question. So Dr. Funky, that one was for me actually.
Oh, sorry.
So no, you're totally fine. So I actually started fostering because I work at Michigan Humane, but like a lot of us, I fell into it by accident. There were some kittens in need and we didn't have a foster parent available, so they went home with me. And it was supposed to be an overnight until we found a foster parent, and then they stayed in my house for 3 weeks. So totally recommend it. That's how it happens. Then you get hooked. But if anybody's on the fence about fostering, I will say it is an incredibly, it is rewarding. I don't want to discount that emotionally. It can be difficult. I highly advocate taking breaks between fosters. It is emotionally taxing to have these teeny tiny little lives entrusted to you, and they're very much dependent on you for everything. And it is rewarding and full of joy. And my poor phone takes, I don't know how many pictures of kittens like who twitched a half an inch and now they're in an even cuter sleeping position and all of that. But it is something that I think every single animal in our shelters benefits from folks who choose to foster. So it's not just kittens. Getting the kittens out of the shelter and into a home where they're safe is fantastic and wonderful. And it's just something that we critically need. But if kittens aren't your thing, that's okay. We foster rabbits, we foster dogs, we have guinea pigs that need foster on occasion. So kind of whatever animal that you are most in tune with or think that, you know, would jive best with your lifestyle. Like Dr. Funky was saying earlier, you know, we try and meet foster parents where they're at and make sure that we're setting them up for success. And so whatever your needs are, we want to try and meet that, because in reality, what you're doing as a foster parent is maximizing our ability to care for other animals. So for every animal that's going to a foster home, that's resources and space and staff time and veterinary time that can be put towards yet another animal that's coming in the door as soon as you're leaving with your foster. So it's definitely something that we are very, very grateful for. And I would highly recommend, you are more than welcome to shoot us a message if you want more information about kind of fostering specifics. The goodbye part is always the hardest. There's never a time where it's not difficult. There's definitely ones that you get attached more than others, but there's never a time where sending an animal off to its new family is not a smidge traumatic. For sure. All right, so I'm looking then at Darlene, thank you for that affirmation. That's fantastic. Oh, Kat, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. So Steph, in terms of adopters and fosters to get updates, so typically when a foster parent returns an animal to the shelter to go up for adoption, we're not generally going to keep you in contact with the adopter. Now, the benefit of finding an adopter who's in your life already, whether it's a friend of a friend, an acquaintance, the receptionist at your dentist office, whatever it is then you do have that avenue to access. My poor siblings have been the benefit of many of my foster animals over the years. But yeah, so we're not normally able to keep you in contact with the adopter necessarily. There are some exceptions, which again, we can take that conversation offline and talk that through with you a little bit further. But usually once the fosters come back and they go up for adoption on the adoption floor, we can always let you know when they've been adopted and say, hey, your litter went up today at noon on Saturday and they all had a home by the end of the day, which happens quite frequently. We love it. It makes us super happy. But yeah, we usually, once they come back to the shelter, that's usually kind of the point where you're saying goodbye and they're heading off to that next step, which is finding that forever family. All right, so folks, I do just want to make sure that we're using Dr. Funke's time effectively. So does anybody have any other additional questions about the medical side of fostering, supplies, what you can expect from having a whole bunch of crazy kittens in your home for several weeks, anything like that?
I might just add one more thing that just popped into my head. So we were talking about like different fosters that might be good fits for different lifestyles. If you don't think any of those fits work for you in your lifestyle, another option that you could consider is volunteering. So you don't immediately get to jump to working with the kittens specifically when you're volunteering, but if you try, I couldn't tell you about the different tiers of the volunteer program in that much detail, but there are tiers to it. And if you become a volunteer with us, one of them is working specifically in kitten socialization and kitten cuddling. So after some additional training on how to not spread germs in the shelter, the kittens that are still in the shelter do get a little extra love from our volunteers. So that's like an alternative pathway for people where foster just isn't really like an option at this time.
Awesome. Thank you for that reminder. So folks, if there's no other outstanding questions, Dr. Funke and I will stay on the call until about 10:45. So if there's anything that's kind of been percolating in the back of your brain, you can feel free to drop it into the chat at any point. But for everyone else, that does conclude this year's virtual kitten shower. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come hang out with us and talk kittens, because it's one of our favorite things at Michigan Humane is kittens. So please enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I am not in Michigan today, but I've heard the weather there is supposed to be lovely. So go take advantage of some sunshine, and hopefully we'll see you soon, either as a foster or a volunteer, or when we are back to doing events and all that jazz. Thank you again, folks, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
And Dr. Funke, I'm going to need that sweater.
It's secondhand.
That's even better.
I think I went through like a thread up phase where I was only buying secondhand things.
I love it. That's my personal preference, is all of the secondhand.
I like to wear something cat themed for the kitten shower every year. So leopard print, it's kind of cute.
I feel like that's appropriate. Yeah. Leopard print is always appropriate.
I have a couple different for when we do go back to doing in-person ones, maybe someday, like some cat dresses that I can break out.
Do you know, somebody was telling me ModCloth apparently has an entire line of things that have animal prints on them. My credit card would probably cry.
Yeah, that's where they're from. They say like classy cat lady to me.
Right.
Dr. Funky, and I just wanted to
Oh,
thank
yeah. I
Oh.
see the question. Yeah, we've had kittens like that too. One of the other doctors here actually had a litter that like one kitten wouldn't wean off the bottle until like 7 weeks of age. And she was like, I don't know what to do. I'm supposed to go on a vacation. They should have been weeks ago. So I actually had to kidnap that kitten for the weekend when she went on the trip because it still needed to be bottle fed. Like it just wouldn't give it up. So yeah, kittens within the same litter can't be at different stages because they don't all learn at the same rate. Little light bulbs go off at different times for them. And I'm going to steal a page out of the Kitten Lady book and say that you kind of meet them where they are. So you treat each kitten as an individual, which can sometimes be hard when they're like a litter. And if you know that 2 of your kittens are just at a different stage, you just try and experiment with what works for each kitten. Can I see the rest of the question?
Yeah, Marissa, so you're doing KMR and gruel, but you're concerned about how much formula the big kids are getting?
Well, everyone will eat gruel, but they give up on it if there isn't KMR in the gruel. If I put KMR in the gruel, it's so much more delicious, and the little ones that aren't growing very fast tend to be more enthusiastic. The big kids will eat kibble, but they also think the KMR is delicious. So I'm like, is that bad for them? Because like I feed them all together. I put a lot of plates out so that they're not fighting over it. But I'm just like worried that like maybe it's like, you know, letting a 4-year-old have a pacifier in preschool. Like, I don't know.
So I would probably like weigh those kittens, the like sus ones, before and after, and I would try and maybe feed the other ones separately and weigh them before and after as well. So like the before and after weights will tell you how much each group is consuming. And if the kittens that are kind of completely will eat like regular kibble and canned food, like if you feed them separately during a feeding time, and they are like gaining weight normally after their feedings, then that's probably enough. If you do that and they like eat 2 bites and they're still like, where's the KMR? Then those ones you probably want to put them back with like the original group that's still like KMR savvy. The other option is you can syringe feed them the gruel mixture. So if you take like a syringe with no nipple attachment, just like a 20 ml syringe or something like that, sometimes we'll like just kind of like a little bit of food into their mouths at a time for some of the kittens, and then the other ones won't have access to it, right, if it's not down on the ground. Just kind of some different options. But yeah, the KMR is probably not going to hurt them at that age. It's like, it's when the food sits out and it gets kind of grody after a while that I think like it'll start to grow bacteria and stuff, which could hurt them.
Right. So my understanding is that the KMR shouldn't sit out for more than like half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I've been sticking to that, but in between, like I'll do like a 45-minute session with the KMR, and then I'll make a gruel with just water and CN and leave that out for like 4 or 5 hours. Is that okay to do?
Yeah, will they eat CN better than normal kitten food? Or
I don't know.
Sometimes like they like the moussey texture of that one better, but are their poops normal right now?
No. We're on a few medications right now. We're working it out with the probiotics.
Yeah, so I guess I would probably try regular kitten food compared to like CN, like the regular canned kitten food. And I would try and like treat them as maybe like 2 separate groups during feeding time.
Okay.
See how it works out. You can always put them back together.
I like that we're beginning and ending this with a conversation about poop. Because it really is, it's a kitten thing. So,
it is.
All right, folks. So we are at the end of time. So if you are still on the call, thank you for sticking with us. We appreciate it. But this is going to conclude this year's Kitten Shower. So thank you again for joining us. And if you do have any follow-up questions, if you think of anything, feel free to drop us a line through the Michigan Humane website. There's a contact us form on there. And you can just drop those questions through and we'll make sure they get shuttled over to the appropriate folks here at the organization. Thank you again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.